بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. And welcome to another episode of the Living with Barakah show, a YouTube and Facebook show that connects spirituality to personal and professional development to help you live a life of barakah. I'm your host, Mohammed Faris, the founder of the Productive Muslim Company. And over the last few weeks, we've been exploring different topics to kind of prepare some Ramadan, but also to up our games as professionals, to pray like a professional, to fast like a professional. And today we're here with Sheikh Joe Bradford to talk about how to give like a professional. And before I introduce our speaker, I want to just give a context for this. A lot of us, when we think about giving, sadaqah and zakah, alhamdulillah, a lot of us, give a lot in Ramadan. We want to give a lot. But sometimes we don't really think about our giving. We don't plan our giving. We don't strategize our giving for maximum benefit. And I tapped and sort of asked my good friend, Sheikh Joe Bradford, a financial ethic advisor, someone who's been thinking about personal finance and money matters from an Islam perspective, on how we should approach giving so that we can give like a professional. So today, inshallah, we have Sheikh Joe Bradford, who is an entrepreneur and American scholar of Islam. He has a master's of Islamic law from the University of Medina and has studied traditionally in the Muslim world for the past 20 years. He was a senior Sharia consultant for Rajhi Bank, the largest Islamic bank in the Middle East. And also he is the most sought after ethical financial advisor that I personally know, and many people have been sought for individuals, organizations, on how to organize our personal finance in a way that fits with our values. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Joe Bradford.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair for coming on, and Jazakallah khair for everyone who's streaming us live here today, inshallah ta'ala. If you're here for the first time and watching this live, please type in you in the chat. Let us get to know you and get your friends to come and watch, inshallah ta'ala. So, Sheikh Joe, I think let's start off by this whole idea of giving. Why we need to start thinking of giving like a professional. Why should we, don't just give and, whatever comes, bismillah, there's a few reals, a few dollars in the box, just throw it in the box, or just, swipe your credit card whenever you find some opportunity. Why should you give like a professional?
Well, I think it's self-apparent, or I should begin with, bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu salam ala rasulillah, seek the barakah in saying that first. I think it's very apparent to all of us as Muslims that giving is part and parcel of our faith. That zakat is a pillar of Islam. That the Prophet ﷺ said, "As-sadaqatu tudfi'u ghadab al-Rabb kama yutfi'u al-ma'u an-nar." That charity extinguishes the Lord's anger like water extinguishes the fire. The as-sadaqatu burhan, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that charity is an evidence. There's to know about giving in Islam. One of the things, though, that I feel that we many times fall victim to is not really knowing why we give. I have met people in the past that have clients who, I'm very surprised when they have come to me. Their main complaint was not that they didn't know how to manage their money, or not that they were having trouble making money. It was that when they gave too much. They gave without thought. They gave and it jeopardized the other things that were going on in their lives. And all of that there has to be a balance to all of that. So I think that when we talk about giving as a professional, and if we're going to define, what being a professional here and being a professional Muslim is, and we want to inject the idea of ihsan into everything that we do. And if we're injecting ihsan into everything that we do, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك, that you worship Allah as if He sees you, and although as if you see Him, and although you do not see Him, you know that He sees you. This idea of muraqabah, of the idea, the concept of Allah continuously watching all that we do, and that we will be held account for what we do, and therefore we want to do it in the best manner possible, in the best manner feasible. That means that when we give, we need to have and we talk, Muhammad, you and I have talked about this several times, not only in Living with Barakah, in other classes and lectures, about how it's not just enough to have an intention to do something, but there needs to be a positive, productive intention behind it. It has to be. It has to have an intention which is good and also leads to an effective outcome. And I find that many times when we talk about sadaqah, we think of it in kind of unbridled terms, and that's where we 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 do something we intend to be good, and then it comes back and it bites us because we've jeopardized many other things that are responsibilities in our lives. And then we say to ourselves, well, how did I get into this situation? Why am I having trouble? Why am I struggling financially? I did good. I gave sadaqah. Where's the problem?
I love that. It kind of reminds that verse, ولا تجعل يدك مغلولة إلى عنقك ولا تبسطها كل البسط, right? It's like, don't withhold and don't just go all out, right? And
Yeah.
the idea of Allah described the believers that, والذين إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا, right? They didn't just overspend. It's that balance. So in that, I mean, sometimes again, we maybe sometimes culturally, or a lot of us, we think that this whole idea is just give and don't think about giving and don't budget and don't don't plan it. Just give, man, and khalas. And or we feel like that's the right way of giving. And if we are
Right.
professional, we're putting too many structures. We're maybe making something that's hard. Like, what are your thoughts about that from that approach, Shatan?
Well, I think you quoting those two ayahs is very apt for the concept that I was going for, and the idea that being giving as a professional can be skewed in one of two ways. On the one hand, people can be saying, you know what, I'm just being too meticulous with this. I just need to give and not even think about it. And then others saying, well, no, I'm to give like a professional is for me to just give endlessly without thinking about it, because I know that I have the earning power and that I can afford this. And both of them are very, they're over here, they're juxtaposed on the ends, and we need to be people of wasatiyah. We have to be people of middle ground. And that means giving to the extent that we can, but also but also thinking, why we give. In the famous hadith of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he asked the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, I have a lot of wealth. I only have one daughter. Should I give away all of my wealth? And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, no. Should I give away 2/3? No. Half? No. 1/3. He said 1/3, and yet 1/3 is still much. الثلث والثلث كثير. لأن تترك أهلك أغنياء خير من تتركهم عالة يتكففون الناس. For you to, he said, 1/3 and 1/3 is still much. For you to leave your family wealthy is better than to leave them poor, begging of the people, poor, dependent upon others. And so our charity cannot jeopardize the rights that our family has over us. اليد العليا خير من اليد السفلى. The upper hand is better than the lower hand. وابدأ بمن تعول, but begin with those who are dependent upon you, which is one of the reasons why we deduct our expenses before paying our zakah, because we need to make sure that we're taking care of those at home. When we're obligated to go for Hajj, one of the obligations is to have classical books of fiqh. They'll say Zad wa rahila, superfluous, extra provisions, and a riding animal. We have to have more than what we leave at home. We have to leave our families at home with enough to take care of them, and then have enough more than that to be able to supply us on our way. So we can't go make Hajj when our families are not being cared for at home. We can't go for Hajj when we have debts that are due and are not being paid. All of this showing that there is a balance to giving versus versus spending. There's a balance of rights and responsibilities. We do have the responsibility to give, and the poor certainly have a right over us, but we also have competing rights, complementary rights, and we have complementary and competing responsibilities. And in coming to balance with that, I believe is exactly what those ayat are mentioning. That it is it's and the believers, when they spend, they are neither miserly, right, nor are they wasteful. And Allah, describes the frivolous in another verse. In al-mubadhirina kanu ikhwana ash-shayatin. Those who are frivolous in their wealth are the brothers of shaitan. Kana shaitan li rabbihi kafura, and shaitan was ungrateful to his Lord. Part of our gratitude is being that intentional with our wealth, and so giving like a professional means that we have a plan, but we're also pushing ourselves for ihsan.
Love that. That's a great way of capturing it. So have a plan, have an intention, and then give with ihsan. So let's start this journey. So what's the first step? I'm somebody who wants to give like a professional. Where do I start? Do I start with my budget or do I start somewhere else? Where do I start?
Well, I think the most important thing that a person starts with is their why. What is the intention that you have behind giving? I come across a lot of people who, especially now in the month of Ramadan, we if you're in a community that has opened up, and you're still, and we all remember from years past, many times there would be, there not only would there be a schedule for sponsoring iftar, but there would be a schedule on the back end of the masjid's, organizational schedule of who's going to stand up and ask for donations on a particular night, especially if you're in a very large congregation, right? And so we all know that, somebody will come and give a very compassionate, very passionate, should I say, very passionate, very emotional appeal. And if we don't really know what our why is, we can become a victim to our own emotions. And being a victim to our own emotions of not feeling that we're doing enough can actually be going against the sunnah of the Prophet. Three young men came to the Prophet, or three young men saw the Prophet in, they said, in inni la asum wa la uftir, يعني أقوم الليل ولا أنام, وقال الثالث لا أتزوج النساء. One of them said, seeing the Prophet ﷺ's actions, I'm going to fast, I'm never going to break my fast. The other one said, I'm going to pray all night, I'm never going to sleep. The third one said, I'm never going to get married. And the Prophet ﷺ heard about their actions and said, I fast and I break my fast. I pray and I sleep. And I get married to women. So whoever seeks after other than my sunnah, then is not from me. So getting trapped in our emotions and our feelings of not only the fear of missing out on good deeds, but the fear that we're not doing enough, is a very, very dangerous track to go down. And it inevitably will lead us to sacrificing someone else's right for the other. And as the Prophet ﷺ had told, had told his companions, لِرَبِّكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ وَلِجَسَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ وَلِأَهْلِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ فَأَعْطِ كُلِّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّهُ. That your Lord has a right over you, your body has a right over you, your wife has a right over you. So give everyone that has a right over you their right. And part of that is starting with, okay, why am I giving? I'm not going to go and see this ad. I'm not going to go and see an ad on television, or an ad on Instagram or on Facebook, and a video pops up, and we're doing the first thing of its kind ever. Please give to this, this auspicious need. It's unfortunate, but much of what is being advertised is pulling at emotions. So we need to understand, number one, when I have an intention, my intention is to give, but my intention is also to be effective when I give. What does it mean to be effective when we're giving? Well, for us as Muslims, everything that we do should be embodying compassion. This is something that we're going to talk about more on Sunday, inshallah ta'ala. How does our giving embody compassion? الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن يرحم من في الأرض يرحمك من في السماء. That those who show compassion, that Ar-Rahman will show them mercy. Have mercy on those who are in the earth. He who is above the heavens will show you mercy. So everything that we do, we want it to be injected with a level of rahmah, and we want it to be effective. we also we also want it we also want it to be positive. So a positive, effective intention. Those three things are very important, and that means that we give in light of what Allah has ordered us to do, in in the guidelines of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and with the proper intention in our heart, to know the underlying motivation for it. And this is Muhammad. This is something that I think is lost on many of us. We sometimes will in not in we will not involve ourselves in. We're not giving to ourselves. We're actually giving to our egos. We're not volunteering. We're volunteering, right? So it's not volunteerism. It's voluntourism, right? We're doing it because it makes us feel good. So there's a fine line between true altruism, true giving up of the self, and giving to the self, and knowing knowing that one of the first three people to be called upon the day of judgment and to be judged for their actions and to be thrown into the hellfire will be the person who gives sadaqah. Is it should be very it should be very much a warning for us, in that it says what did you do in the dunya? Well, I gave lots of sadaqah. إنما فعلت ذلك ليقال عنك ثري or ليقال عنك سخي أو كما جاء في الحديث أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Oh, you only did that so it could be said that you were giving, that you were generous, and it was said, so off to the hellfire. So having compassion as the mainstay of our efficacy in our giving is right in line with وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We only sent you as a mercy for all the world. Mercy to whom? Mercy to yourself, mercy to your family, mercy to your community, mercy to the broader community around the world.
SubhanAllah. I mean, I think that's on those 2 points, right? The fact that a lot of us get, like you said, emotionally tugged into it is, again, and they are doing their job. They're trying to appeal and get to higher number of donors, but being intentional, right? And that intention, saying this is part of my intention, this is part of my giving plan or not. That's one. And two, like I said, what you said was very powerful. The idea that, do we give to show compassion, or do we give to basically feed our egos? And what happens when that giving doesn't, quote unquote, benefit us, right? Or that giving is not in line. Like, what if a giving doesn't in line with our tax planning, or a giving doesn't in line with our tourist vacation plans, right? How does it go? Reminds me of a story. It's a story of a person who was asked, what is generosity? And then he said, oh, generosity. Someone said, oh, generosity is me finding someone who's poor and giving them a lot of wealth. And he said, well, that's not generosity, because when you give that person wealth, you expect that thanks, and they expect the person to say, oh, mashallah, thank you so much, I appreciate you, make dua for you. So they're not being generous, you're doing it for yourself. The second person said, okay, generosity is me finding someone who needs money, and then I'll go quietly to their house and then sort of drop some money and then run away. And then they won't find out it's me. He's like, well, yes, but you'll still, part of you would thinking, oh man, this guy wakes up in the night and he opens his door and he sees that pot of money and he's gonna think who put it there, but make the offer. So you're already almost like contemplating and asking for that good deed, or expecting that thank you, even if it's not face to face. So like, okay, so they're like, well, what is generosity? And I said, well, generosity is you finding someone who needs something and you drop something on their way, right? So there's no trace ever of that money coming from anyone except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like they should look at that and go, this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not from me, it's not from you, it's not from anybody. That is true generosity. And that's something, like I said, it's completely lost for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Allah says, praising the believers, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We only feed you for the face of Allah. We don't want any reward nor any thanks. And so, those are two things that we're looking for. Is, when I give, is there a reward that's coming back to me that I'm intending? Number two, am I looking for recognition and thanks? Those are two key components in kind of understanding. Am I feeding my, am I giving to negate my ego, or am I giving to feed my ego?
Awesome. So start off with the intention. So let's say, okay, I'm I'm gonna have a plan. I want to give. I'm trying to be aligned with compassion, as you mentioned. Where do I start? How do I start that plan, especially now in the month of Ramadan?
So with having that intention, you get to kind of a line in the sand, and that line in the sand has to do with the facts, the facts of your personal finance, the facts of the cause or organization that you're giving to. And one of the one of the most dangerous things, and it almost sounds counterintuitive, because you want to do due diligence on organizations that you're giving to, on causes that you're giving to. You want to make sure that if you're giving your zakah, it's actually zakah eligible. Everyone, for some reason, nowadays thinks that any bright idea that they have that they feel good about is somehow zakah eligible. That's not the case. Zakah has very specific categories. Sadaqah is much broader, but the you want to do the due diligence on the facts. At the same time, however, you also don't want to become so bogged down in the facts that you start to minimalize, and shaitan starts to whisper to you that what you're doing is not enough, and you stay, or your nafs whispers to you that it's not enough, and you stay away from giving, right? الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا والله واسع عليم. Shaitan promises you poverty, and orders you to lewdness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uh, promises you of forgiveness and bounty from Him, and Allah is all encompassing and all knowing. So we will sometimes get bogged down in the facts. So I might say to myself, okay, I know that there is war and famine right now in Yemen, very serious issue that's currently going on. I mean, just unspeakable things happening to people right now. But then I see the ramifications of that, or for example, the cause of the Rohingya, or the cause of Syrian refugees, or the cause of, say, um, of say, cash bail here in the United States. There are many causes around the world, and when we hear about the cause, we think to ourselves, I can really help somebody with this. I know I can. I know if I just, even if I just give a little, I'm going to be able to help, to touch one person. Then we start to hear the statistics, and we say, oh, there are, millions displaced, billions that are owed, X number of dollars that are needed, this many people around the world, and we start to minimize the effect of our own donation vis-a-vis those numbers. So the facts actually drowned out the compassion. The facts actually take us away from our intention. The facts actually stop us from giving. We actually have this like financial nihilism, where it doesn't matter what I do, what I give to, I'm not going to be effective, and therefore it's better for me not to give. And this idea of there being like a sort of a nihilism with money, is addressed in the Sunnah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the story of people that came before us, and he said, there was a man that came before you. He said to himself, tonight I'm going to go out and give sadaqah. And in the evening he went out and to give sadaqah. He found somebody, he put the sadaqah in their hand, and then he left. And in the morning he woke up, and people were saying, who is this idiot last night that went out, and gave sadaqah to a thief? Like, as if thieves need anything. And then the next night, went out and gave sadaqah to a prostitute. And then the next night went out and gave sadaqah to a rich person of all people. And then on the fourth night, he says, I'm going to go out and give sadaqah. And he's driven by this feeling that what he's doing is not enough. It's not effective, right? The categories aren't deserving enough. That there's something outside of that that's moving him away. And so, he goes to give sadaqah to, a person on the fourth night. It turns out to be an angel from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who turns to him and says that I'm an angel sent to you from your Lord to tell you that your charity had been accepted. that on the first night the thief said to themselves, said to themselves, I will, I will not, I will, I'm going to stop stealing. The prostitute said, I will stop, selling myself. The rich person said, somebody's giving me, that means I should be giving,
SubhanAllah.
right? So we can get drowned out by the facts, and we should never allow, you know, that is really the deciding factor. What and what this that fear that what we're doing is not enough can many times be amplified by the very next point that was, I think, what you were driving to is, after our purpose, this buffer zone between our purpose and our actual giving is this financial nihilism that we can fall into, knowing too much, knowing too many facts, and thinking my $50 is not going to make a difference in the 50 million that's needed. Well, it might not look like a lot with regards to the 50 million, but it will make a difference in one person's life, right? That $50 might actually be an entire year's salary to some people around the world. That $50 might actually pay the fee of a person who, if they did not pay that fee, would be in jail. That $50 might actually feed, an entire village, much less a family. So thinking about it in the idea of direct effectiveness allows us to continue to give despite the enormous need that's out there. The counterpart of that is basic financial literacy. Um, I come across people, and it actually boggles my mind sometimes to, if we're talking about giving like a professional, you would be very surprised at how many people are working professionals, extremely blessed, extremely wealthy, are people of considerable means that are still living paycheck to paycheck, that they don't know what they're spending on and what they're saving. They don't have a plan even for their own investments. Much, had their employer not forced them into something, much less a plan for their giving. And so, the next thing that scares us, even if we say, okay, I know that my $50 can make a difference, then the next scare is, yeah, but I don't know what that $50 is going to do to my family, and therefore I'm not going to give it. Why don't we know what effect that's going to have on our own finances? Is because we don't have a budget. We don't have very basic knowledge of what are the parameters that I can give in when I'm giving from my freely available wealth.
I love that, and that can get into something that's maybe some might feel uncomfortable, right? You think, well, we hear stories about the Sahaba just giving and giving half their wealth and giving full wealth, and then we start to budgeting. Are you serious? Budget your sadaqah? Like, aren't you going against the whole barakah of sadaqah? Like, just give and expect that Allah gives you more with that. That again, there's something as cultural or not, but we hear that, right? Don't
Yeah,
fear. Just close your eyes, blindly. Just put it in the box, and inshallah khair. We'll figure it out.
absolutely. I think one of the things is that in addition to our emotional giving, we also have a very emotional approach to the history of early Islam, and that is, we hear about, that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu came and gave all of his wealth, and Umar had only given half, and he said, I won't compete with Abu Bakr after this day. That Uthman radiallahu anhu bought Ruma, and he prepared the armies for XYZ battle, and if you look at all of those events, those were actually individual events that were major events throughout the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Those were not the everyday occurrences. And it also doesn't negate the fact that many of those companions had ongoing sources of income that were coming in. So yes, Abu Bakr gave away all his wealth, but he had wealth the next day. Why? Because he had receivables coming in from successful business that he was doing. He had an understanding of what he had and what was coming to him. Um, the Prophet ﷺ saying, "Ana wa kafilu yatimi fil jannati kahatain," wa ashara bi isba'ihi wa sababatihi or sabahatihi alayhi salatu wasalam. that I and the guardian of an orphan are like this in Jannah. And he used his pointer and his middle finger, to show the proximity. So what does it mean to be a guardian for an orphan? It means that you're not just giving the orphan a one time, hey, here's $50, kid. You're actually caring for them for the rest of their life. That consistency in doing that good deed is what gets you that proximity to the Prophet ﷺ in Jannah, not just the one off that you're giving someone. So doing that, being consistent and understanding that yes, there are at times incidents in the seerah and incidents in our lives where giving more is warranted, but knowing how much you can give. When the Ansari brother of Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he said to him, or I'm sorry, said to him, قَاسَمْتُكَ نِصْفَ مَالِي, I'll give you half of my wealth. How does he know what half of his wealth is if he hasn't actually accounted for it? If it doesn't actually have a grip on his own finances? So, having a budget and understanding can actually allow us to become much more effective in our charity as well.
Love that. That's a very powerful point. I guess one of the challenge, well, one is to know your. So we spoke about your intention, know why you're giving. Spoke about having a grip on your wealth, understand your budget. So maybe even simple budget, like what you actually know, what you need to do. Don't do any dhulm or injustice to those around you, and you can give comfortably. Also know when to give. But I guess again, sometimes I feel like in modern times, charity has become very faceless. Um, we give to organizations, alhamdulillah, all those organizations do amazing work. But we sponsor some distant orphan, perhaps. But we might have relatives who might be orphans themselves that we don't support, or we would pay medical bills of XYZ community, but realize that there's maybe an old uncle, auntie that we perhaps in our own media sector we don't give to. I don't know if you can speak to the why we find it so easy now. Just go log in line, just click donate, and just feel good about ourselves. Maybe back to the feel good factor, versus doing the tough work of figuring out who in your own circle, your family, your community, in your own friends maybe who need something and supporting them and giving that sadaqah directly to them, basically.
Yeah, so I think there's again, that's one of those fallacies of thinking that charity is better when it's given far away, when it's not connected to family, and when it's not connected to us. And one of the things that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala praises or one of those categories of people that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala praises charity to is those people who are in such close proximity to you and who don't feign need, or they put up a barrier to knowing their need. يحسبهم أغنياء تحسبهم الأغنياء من التعفف تعرفهم بسيماهم. I believe I'm butchering the ayah there, but that you تحسبهم you تحسبهم أغنياء. You think that these people are rich, that they have means, but you'll know them by their signs. Think that the charity becomes extremely impersonal when we don't look to our local needs first. And this is a tough spot for a lot of people. They don't like to hear this. Many classical scholars consider that if you give zakat outside of your locality before the needs of your locality has been met, that your zakat is invalid and you have to give zakat again. Meaning, if you have a zakat eligible person in your locality that is going without, and you send your zakat out of your locality, that is considered sadaqah. That is not considered zakat. You must give your zakat again. People don't want to hear that. Now, I understand the needs of a global economy, and and blight and famine and need all around the world, but there's a lot to be said about strengthening our local areas, understanding the water rising for all boats in our area. That actually gives us a stronger base to do more effective giving in places which are farther away. Number two is, the only exception that some scholars made to that was that if you are sending directly to people that are family, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that charity to family is sadaqatun wasila, that it is charity and strengthening of family ties. So, it's many times it allows us, and this is something that's kind of fascinating in donor studies. There's a heroic narrative that we create when we give. So there are two things that we come up with when we give, and one of those things, we'll talk more about this on what they call terror management studies, and terror of death motivates us to give in certain ways. One of those motivations for giving is called creating a heroic narrative, and so we want to be seen as a hero. Well, it's easier to be seen as a hero when you can completely control the narrative in your mind. So when I give sadaqah halfway across the world, when I give zakah halfway across the world, I don't know the reality of those people's situation. Psychologically, what's happening is that my mind is actually going to fill in the blanks, and that's why when the less connection that we have with people, our mind actually fills in the blanks with things that are favorable for us. And so this is why we see that people online are living such better lives, because we only see a snippet or two of their life, and we don't actually know that what they're doing, or what they're how they're living is actually we see all of the great dishes that they cook on their Instagram page, hint hint, but we don't see the disasters. How much food was ruined. We don't see the failures, and so one reason why we like to give like that, and we give in a way that is very disconnected, it is because it actually, again, going back to that issue of compassion and our intention, it feeds our ego in a very, very indirect way. It feeds our ego in a way that is almost a form of riyah. It's almost a form of ostentation. It's as Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah said, there is a level of riyah, a level of ostentation that is more pernicious, it's more surreptitious than even just saying, I'm going to do this to be seen by other people. But it's even to just think about oneself as better than others. And so when we give in that way, I believe it's because it helps us think better about ourselves without having to actually take into consideration people's feelings, which is one of the reasons why when the Prophet ﷺ, said, do you, he was asked, how can I have my my needs fulfilled and my dua answered? He said, go and find an orphan and give that orphan, and wipe your hand over that orphan's head. There should be a physical connection to the person that you're giving. You should know their needs, and we've separated that from much of what we do, thinking that it's better, when in reality we're creating, again, a narrative in our mind so it can be said, ليقال عنك متصدق, right? ليقال عنك سخي, so it can be said that you're charitable, that you are giving, and that was said. Who was it said to, though? Was it said in our own minds? Was it said on our Facebook post when we shared the GoFundMe link? When we were on Launch Good, whatever it is. All of those are that's not the fault of those platforms. It's the fault of us. What are we actually giving for? Where do our intentions lie?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. And one thing that you teach in the Money Masterclass, which we do this every now and then, about this whole idea of having a portfolio. Again, just be clear, and before I get hate mails from organizations like, what, you say don't give to organizations? No. I'm saying is, we're saying having tension, which is very powerful. Understand your financial position, understand your budget is the way you are stand, and then kind of be strategic, giving example, like I said, have some charity where you can really connect with a person, someone specifically support. You can really, like I said, wipe over their heads and really connect with them. It could be ideally a relative, if not someone close. And again, consistent, long term, not just like it's one-off donations, and then just like throwing money right to left, kind of go, inshallah, it kind of sticks in the wall somehow. And two, when you work with organizations, there's a question here by Randa, which I think is very powerful, is any recommendations for organizations which are qualified. So almost like, how do we assess and know, first of all, based on our intention, who to give to if you're talking about organizations, and how to research that basically.
Yeah. So let's touch on Runda's question, as well as one of the reasons why we want to have that in mind. The more consistent we can be in our budgeting and understanding our financial situation, the more consistent we can be in giving. So many times organizations, and I talk to charitable organizations all of the time, they actually find themselves, 2 to 3 months out of the year, not bringing in anything and actually struggling. And the reason being is because they don't have consistent donors. They have big donors at certain times of the year, but they don't have consistent donors. So sometimes it's better for you to give, 50 dollars a month than it is for you to give $600 one time, because now they can bank on the fact that, not only have you budgeted for the giving, but they can budget for the giving. This is super important. Not only are you budgeting for the giving, but they can budget for the giving, because they can expect that that money is going to be coming in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So now I've got $50 consistently coming in, until the end of the year. Now, a big question that a lot of Muslims ask is like, well, how can I give consistently but meet my intention of zakat as well as sadaqah? Well, it's really easy. The Prophet ﷺ allowed us to give in advance. He allowed his uncle Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib to give up to 2 years of his zakat in advance. Now you can do that lump sum if there's a dire need, or you can simply intend that, when I give $50 a month to, say, Penny Appeal, right? Great organization, does great work. When I give $50 a month to Penny Appeal, to fight poverty in Palestine or Bangladesh or in the US or anywhere else, right? When I give $50 a month to them, I know that I'm giving it to a zakat worthy cause, and I intend that that's going to be zakat. So let's say from April 2020, I started giving $50 a month, and then April 2021 rolls around and it's Ramadan again, and now I want to calculate my zakat. I go through and I calculate my zakat, and I find out that I actually owe $1,000 in zakat based upon, all of my assets minus my expenses. And I've had the nisab for longer than a year. Well, I've also given $600 already, prepaid zakat. And so when I calculate my zakat, I find out, oh, I've already given 600. I calculated it as 1,000. The difference is 400. Now I have $400 that I can give in a lump sum towards any organization or cause or person that I want during Ramadan for zakat. Now you don't have to pay your zakat in Ramadan, but a lot of people do. Um, or, you might have given $50, and then you come to this Ramadan, you find out, what, I only owed $500 in zakat. Well, I just gave $500 in zakat throughout the past year, and I gave $100 in sadaqah. So, being that person that is diligent with their own finances actually allows you to fulfill the needs when there are shortfalls in organizations, for the needs that they help facilitate. So by giving consistently and in advance, you can not only regulate your own spending, which means that, a lot of people, the reason why they feel that they can't give is because they they have to save up to it. All right, but if you invest in your akhirah in the beginning of the month, just like you invest in your dunya and your retirement portfolio, every month you've got $100 going into your 401k, or your IRA. Well, you can have $100 going towards charity, and then at the end of the year, you have a statement that says, "Hey, I gave this much. I get this tax deduction, and maybe you get this, them deduction. I don't know. We could. I don't want to take that out. You Muhammad's gonna have me like give me that in a spreadsheet. Um,
Yeah.
but quantifying that becomes easier, and understanding where you sit vis-a-vis your charity, allows you not only, and there's another thing about giving as a professional, it not only allows you to be consistent, which is part of the sunnah, to meet the needs of the poor, which is part of the sunnah, to encourage proper spending in others, which is part of the sunnah, but it also meets your why of being compassionate, and it meets your how. So if you live in a country where you get tax deductions because of charitable giving, and you're giving to a registered charity, then you will be able to claim that on your taxes, and you'll be able to get money back that was taken away from you, in lieu of you either spending it in a certain way or giving it in a certain way. You're not getting your zakat back. You're not getting your sadaqah back. Let's be clear about that. A lot of people make that mistake. I get a tax refund. Does that mean that I'm getting my sadaqah back from the government? No. They took your money before you even gave sadaqah. They said, "Hey, Muhammad, we see that you've got money. Let's take that money. We're willing to give you 60% of that money back if you give charity this year." So it actually behooves you to so that you can have more freestanding capital to spend on your family and to give in charity, for you to actually record your charitable interactions and get those deductions, and and itemize those things. So you not only meet your why, but you also meet your who and your how and your when, by being more thoughtful with all of this.
I love that, and I have to give share this with you. I think I shared this before, that ever since you kind of shared with us about this whole idea of a charity portfolio, it's been just life changing in the sense that as part of the budget, I'm actually put a line for zakah, for sadaqah, for sadaqah jari, and start even like budgeting in advance, and you keep track, right? You say, okay, oh, this month I need to work a bit more, I need to pull back, versus kind of being haphazard, not knowing if you're giving or not being conscious, not being intentional. So, I mean, I used to see
Wanting to give, but then finding out that you can't.
can't.
Right?
Yes, oh my God, yes. A few times, like happened a few times. So that is just very very powerful, and being more quote unquote in control, and being a word that you like to use, being a good steward, right? Being a good khalifa,
Absolutely.
a steward of the wealth Allah's given you. If Allah gives you some money and wealth, no matter how big or small. We're not talking about a millionaire. We're talking about living. Sometimes even the small. You being a good steward, and even that's small. A lot of people say, "Oh, when I get rich, I'll give more charity." And I will say, if
Yeah.
you can give charity when you are quote unquote struggling, then that behavior won't change when you become a millionaire. It's the same.
Absolutely.
It's the same person basically.
Absolutely. I don't believe that we answered on this question. I think we got to the first part that leads into her question. Her question was, I believe, that how do we vet organizations
Yes.
for being able to give? And she mentioned specifically Sadaqah Jariyah. So, number one is, this was kind of going to be the third leg of what we talked about today, and that is how to leverage free information to be able to give more effectively. So, you can use websites like Charity Navigator, like the Better Business Bureau, like GuideStar, like Foundation Center, and these are all organizations, or are all websites that collate and present information about registered charities and the work that they do and their financials. Now, any charity that's registered in the United States, you have access to what's called their 990, which is their filing with the IRS showing how they've used their money. And so you should look for things like program expenses, operational expenses. On GuideStar and all of these other charity tracking sites, charity organization tracking sites, they consider a 4-star charity to be one that has used 15% or less on operations. For us as Muslims, then a charity which is zakat eligible should really only be using 12.5%, or 1/8, or 13.5%, 1/8 of their total take, for their operations. So, if you can find an organization that has a very low operational take from the charity that they've raised, it means that they're giving more towards operations. That means that your money is being used more effectively for the cause of the poor. There's nothing wrong with using zakat for operational expenses if if you are a organization dedicated towards serving zakat categories. Not every organization that's a charity is actually qualified for that. A lot of this is a big misnomer, and we've seen a lot of abuse of zakat funds in the past because of this. Not every organization is qualified to collect and distribute zakat. Only some are. Not every cause is zakat eligible. But by using websites like this, using free information that's out there, looking to organizations like American Muslim Community Fund, right? American Muslim Community Fund does donor advised funds, and they actually help you if you have wealth and you don't know where to spend it, you don't know where to leverage it in getting charitable donations out the door and to people that are worthy. And then seeing them, maybe some of those funds held and invested over time, and then that sadaqah jariyah, that perpetual charity multiplied, then that is one organization doing that kind of work. And Muhi Khawaja, who's running it, is a great guy. You should definitely reach out to. They are one of the organizations out there that's doing that, and I think that you can be more effective. But in the end of the day, regardless of whether you went with that organization, this organization, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to you and how you want to be most effective, and what level of control you want in creating a sadaqah jariyah and creating a charity that's given in perpetuity. You can do that as well by just creating a simple trust and then funding that trust, and then that trust actually, by if you do it in the United States, will have minimum payouts that it has to give every year due to trust and endowment laws. But it's very feasible, but it takes education, and in order to educate yourself on how to do that, you will have to invest some time, and you should look at every investment of your time in doing that as an investment in your akhirah.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly speaking, again, this title is Give Like a Professional. And as professionals, we spend time, hopefully budgeting. We spend time planning our retirement, hopefully. If not, then you need to start time doing that. We spend time planning things out, planning a vacation or planning our next trip, or, we do that. And then when we, especially like going on a vacation, you're gonna go in the hotel to get all the reviews, make sure it's all 5-star and everything else.
Absolutely.
Why not approach charity the same way? You're giving wealth away. If you're gonna, like I said, ideally find someone close, again, the relatives, support them, someone, again, put that human touch. That's great. If you don't have to, inshallah, if you already do that, want to give more, you want to give to organizations, which we recommend, do your research, give more, inshallah, and really make it happen, make it powerful, inshallah. For those, again,
I think
yep.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say is, as part of that idea, that concept that we talk about in the masterclass of the charity portfolio, I believe that having a wise, effective plan is very important. So giving some to organizations that will have farther reach than you, having personal connections in your local community so that you stay connected to the needy in your area, having times where you give in kind or you give in service instead of just giving money, so that you feel the effect of the need on yourself as well, and trying to balance where your charity is most effective. So, for example, I think last year was the first year that I had done udhiyah in the United States in maybe over a decade. And the reason being I did is because my two youngest children had never seen udhiyah, never seen qurban, right? And so I wanted to do the udhiyah so that they could experience that act of worship, and that my older sons would help out with it. They had all seen it when they were young. The younger ones had not. But what I was doing was sending that to an orphanage overseas that one of my friend's grandfathers, again, a personal connection, was running, because I knew that my animal there would be used from the snout to the hoof, whereas in the United States there's a bit of waste with because of the usage and the laws and things like that. So assess, and this is one thing that we'll talk about on Sunday, is assessing where we're being the most effective with the type of charity that we're given, not just the fact that we're given.
Love that. And again, we refer to Sunday workshop. So again, for those of you who don't know, for the past 3 weeks, we've been having a series called Prep for Ramadan Like a Professional. And we've had a first workshop called Pray Like a Professional with Iqbal Nasim, who is the founder of the National Zakat Foundation in the UK. We had Fast Like a Professional with Richard Jordan, who is a health and wellness consultant. That was last week. And this Sunday, we actually have a 3-hour workshop called Give Like a Professional with Joe Bradford. And Joe recorded a short video that I'm going to play now to get you a good idea of what he'll cover in that workshop.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ramadan's fast approaching. Each and every one of us is looking for ways to be most effective when we give this month, whether it be our zakat al-mal, our zakat al-fitr, or just our general sadaqah. In the Give Like a Professional webinar hosted by Productive Muslim, I'm going to be talking to you about how you can take your giving and mix your ibadah with your business, amplifying your giving. We're going to talk about the sources of charity. What are the different resources that you can lean on to be able to maximize what it is that you give? We're going to talk about planning your charity out, having a holistic plan for giving, tracking your charity so that you know where you're going to be most effective, and then maximizing that charity to make sure that it's not only going to those who are in need, but it's going to be the most effective and in fulfilling those needs. We're also going to talk about how to evaluate charities. What do we look for when we're trying to give? What type of programs are available to us as working professionals that can also help us evaluate and give even more to charities than simply what we're able to give? And then lastly, we're going to talk about a very important topic, and that is sadaqah jariyah. How can we start to create forms of charity that act in perpetuity, that outlive us, that outstrip our lives, and to continue to work for our benefit even after we're gone? So I do hope that you'll join us for this webinar. I hope to see all of you there, inshallah ta'ala. We'll be talking about how to give like a professional, and inshallah, we'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, so yes, we'll be, for those of you who don't know, this workshop is available for free for Barakah Academy members. So what is Barakah Academy? Barakah Academy is our online learning platform at Productive Muslim, where Muslim professionals meet and we do live workshops, we do courses, we do a book club, and lots of things, inshallah. And one of the benefits of Barakah Academy is we're doing this 3-part workshop series with Iqbal Nasim, which right when this was completed, but the recording is available on the platform. Fast Like Professional with Richard Jordan, again, was completed, but the recording is available. And now this Sunday inshallah, the April 18th will be 6th of Ramadan, 10 a.m. US Central Time. You can find the local time on the website. If you go to barakahacademy.com, it's a 3-hour workshop where Sheikh Joe will really cover this in more detail. Sheikh Joe, if you just cover like what people should come out of this workshop with, inshallah.
So, as we mentioned in the video, they're going to come out with those 5 points that we talked about. But I think the most important thing that people are going to leave the workshop with is the resolve that they can reach the same level of proficiency and professionalism in their giving that they do in their own career development, that they do in their vacation planning, that they do in their education. And this all points to being a more holistic and rounded person, and being consistent. So I think consistency is not only in the idea of the type of actions, but just in actions in everything. One of the things that sometimes we fall into the trap of is thinking that the same level of diligence that we show in our careers is not necessary when we're doing things for the sake of Allah, when we're doing things for the community, when we're doing things as Muslims. And in reality, we need to be showing even more professionalism in those areas so that we can be the most effective and have the highest level of ihsan. So that if we were, in addition to those 5 points that we mentioned there in the video, that's what I would say you will walk away with, is the resolve that it is possible to be as proficient in those things as you are in everything else in life.
Awesome, inshallah. And again, to access the workshop live this Sunday, please join us at barakahacademy.com. Become a member, have access to these workshops and more. You can learn more at barakahacademy.com. Sheikh Joe, whether someone joins the workshop or not, what's the one piece of advice you want to leave them with so that they maximize their giving this Ramadan, inshallah?
I would say the Prophet ﷺ's advice, be diligent with, seek that which will benefit you, seek Allah's help in doing so, and do not incapacitate yourself. A lot of times, the only obstacle to us moving forward is ourselves. And so, seeking Allah's help and seeking what will benefit us personally, both materially as well as spiritually, is important. Having that intention is the thing that will be the catalyst to move us forward. A lot of it's not about willpower. It's not about mindset. Even sometimes it's just about making sure to put in the work, and then the work builds the habit, and the habit speaks for itself.
Jazakallah khair. Absolutely. And again, we've seen this many times through all your work advice, that it really made a difference. Small habits, small behaviors, that means a big change. We always think about that, like the big moves, that $25,000 check. Well, if you give $5 a month over 10 years or 30, 50 years, it builds up. It builds up. So you just have to focus on those behaviors, inshallah ta'ala. All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this workshop, inshallah ta'ala, and I hope I'll see some of you in the upcoming workshop this Sunday, Give Like a Professional with Sheikh Joe Bradford. Once again, if you're not part of the Living with Barakah show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Muslim. Subscribe to the YouTube channel to get more of this Living with Barakah show. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanak Allahumma hamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh.